Hey YouTube, Kira Qualia here, bringing you all my Cardfight Vanguard Lyrical Monasterio Prism deck profile for posts, trick or trick. This is the other encounter deck that we got out of the Lyrical Monasterio 4th booster set for D format. A very awesome deck. Prisms were always my favorite when they were part of Bermuda Triangle, now made into an encounter deck for Lyrical Monasterio, using all the different units we had from the original Prisms, like Prism Promise Labrador, Celtic, you name it, along with some other new support from the Lyrical Monasterios to help with their search and consistency. It's still playing very, very similarly to the original Labrador with the bounce power, and then being able to just call Prisms out into the field to get additional power and additional criticals. So let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So before we begin, once again, remember that with the Ride deck changes, the main deck now consists of 50 cards, and the Ride deck consists of 4 cards for 54 cards total, with our starter being Coaxing Diva Malene when wrote upon. If you went second, draw a card. Our grade 1 is Diva of Thernody Mariette when wrote upon by Diva of Greeting Gloom Rosalita. Look at the top 7 cards of your deck. Choose up to 1 card with Prism in its card name, reveal it, put it into your hand, shuffle your deck. If you did not reveal a card, you may call this card to rear, and if you called a card, soul charge 1, making up for the soul and at least getting a rear guard unit one way or another, whether it be with the Prism card that you add to your hand or the Mariette that you called a rear guard. Our grade 2 is Diva of Greeting Gloom Rosalita when wrote upon by a unit with Labrador in its name. Choose up to 1 unit card with Prism in its card name from your hand, call it to rear. If you called a card, draw a card. So just having that option for draw power while also setting up your field as you would normally with your Prism cards. And our grade 3 being Prism Promise Labrador, having all of the initial card effects as well as the original Labrador with the additional call power, and then being able to also bounce your rear guards back to your hand with a Soul Blast once per turn to at least give you more prisms to call out from your hand from ones that you already returned onto the field. Now, the one thing is I'm still waiting to, see how prices adjust for the Lyrical Monasterio set for Trick or Trick. So I'm waiting on my other copies of Labrador to, come in. So I'm running the 3 additional copies in the main deck along with the 1 copy in the Ride deck. I have the 2 Roseanne as placeholders for now, but with this card, Prism Promise Labrador on the Vanguard circle once per turn, you can Soul Blast 1, choose 1 of your rear guards, return to the hand, and it gets plus 5,000 to end of turn, this unit. And then on Vanguard, when this unit attacks, you can Counter Blast 1, choose up to 2 unit cards with Prism in their card names from your hand, call cards, and call them to open rear guard. If you called a card, draw a card. If your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, until end of turn, all your front row units get plus 5, and this unit gets critical plus 1. So the additional call option when it attacks, just being able to choose 2 units with Prism and call them to open rear guards, having those bounce options especially is very vital in the deck for you to use. So you at least have open rear guards to be able to call other Prism units onto the field, with them either being Labrador or your other ones we run in the deck, like our Layette or our Celtic onto the field. For the other grade 3s, I also run 2 copies of Colored Bop Dragon Walbrigia, just for the discard cost of when riding from a grade 3, being able to draw a card, making up for what you discarded for your grade 3 ride cost. I only run the 2 though, because you just, want to have the consistency to at least be able to open up one of them when you go for your grade 3 ride in the Ride deck. And for the grade 2s, I do want to run 4 copies of Prism Promise Celtic, just like the Labrador, waiting on the other copies, for the price to settle before I purchase them. With Celtic, when this unit's placed on rear guard from hand or put on the guard circle from hand, if you have a Vanguard Labrador in its card name, it gets plus 5 power and shield until end of turn, having additional power boost for this grade 2, so it can at least hit a 13k body against your opponent. And at the end of the battle, this unit attacked, if you have a Vanguard with Labrador in its card name, Soul Blast 1, return this unit to the hand to choose up to 1 of your rear guards with Prism in its card name and return it to the hand. So Celtic sets up the open rear guard circles, being able to bounce another Prism card, so you could potentially call a Labrador to rear guard if it was the first turn that you rode the other one, bouncing your Celtic and the Labrador to your hand, so you at least have the Persona ride or another card to then be able to call out again thanks to Celtic. And more search power comes in the form of our Lyrical Monasterio generic support, which we run, which consists of 4 copies of Diva of Waterheart Petronil. When placed on rear guard, Counter Blast 1, look at the top 7 cards of your deck, choose up to 1 card with Prism in its card name from among them, reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle your deck. If you did not reveal a card, you may Soul Charge 2, building up more soul to use with all these Soul Blast power, whether it be from Celtic or other cards in the deck. And at the end of the battle, this unit attacked, if you have a Vanguard Labrador in its card name, you may return it to the hand. More protection, but another way to bounce a grade 2 back to the hand to clear up your open rear guard circles to call out your other Prism cards as well. And then I just run the one additional copy, the first time into the fray, Rebellia, for more of a, option for attacks with this card. And once again, working and experimenting with the 54 card decks, making it a little more difficult to choose specific cards to run in the deck for specific spots. But for the grade 1s, I'm going to run 4 copies of Prism Promise Layette as the last Prism card for what we have in, Overdress or D format. When this unit is placed on rearguard from hand or put on the guard circle, you have a Vanguard with Labrador. It either gets +5 power or shield till end of turn. And when this unit is returned to hand from rear, if you have a Vanguard with Labrador in its card name, you may soul charge 1. Then if you did not countercharge this turn, countercharge 1. Making up for Counterblast as well is especially useful since you use those Counterblasts for the initial offensive power of Prism Promise Labrador to begin with. I also run the 2 copies of Oparies for the ride deck shuffleback power, being able to give additional shield or call for multiple units on the field. And also the 4 copies of the new Chilling Tonight Neberona. When your unit with Prism in its card name is placed on another rearguard in the same column as this one, that placed unit gets +5 till end of turn. So working with cards like Celtic or Layette can give them additional +5, whether it's their own card effects when placed on rearguard from hand. So then you just place it, they get the +5, and if you have Neberana in the back row rearguard as well, that card will provide an additional +5 power as well for hitting more and more bigger numbers. With the last of the grade 1s, aside from the Sentinels, being 4 copies of Cooling Heart Yuika. For bounce power, once again, we have a lot of soul charging power in this deck, providing the power as Neberona would, but also being able to bounce cards back to your hand if you just don't have the specific card that could particularly bounce to your hand to use for its own card effects. Like if you have a Labrador on your one rear guard and you just need a way to bounce it back, and if you don't have the Celtic. And then the last of the grade 1s, 4 copies of the new Sentinel, being Sturdy Sweets Samil. So you just have less of the guard restriction, but more units to potentially call and bounce back to your hand instead of having to use Elementary Sanctitude, being a blitz order and not being able to work much with it on the rear guard for you to use. And then the last card that I run, besides the trigger lineup, is the 2 copies of Super Aesthetic Shot. You play this card with a Counterblast 1. All your rear guards get +5 till end of turn. So you get all your rear guards get +5 till end of turn. Having that ability just means more and more power, especially now that you can have Layette and Celtic on the rear guard if you have the proper grade 1 setup as well, for a +15 power to swing against your opponent, being 23 and 25k power in total, both together to hit even if your opponent does get a trigger. And then for the trigger lineup, we're running the 8 criticals, so 4 copies of Edwidge and 4 copies of Shocking Candy Oris for more pressure, especially with Labrador's own additional critical, and the 3 copies of Baratois for the 5k draw trigger shield power, and the 4 copies of Love Thy Cat Lisanne for the heal spot, with our overtrigger being Demonic Fever Gaviera for this spot. If you wanted to run any of the Cray Elemental spots, you can also put it in here, Valmoon, or whichever one you prefer for this also. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed. Like I said, the Prism deck was definitely one of my favorites, and definitely happy that we finally got it in D format of all things. I think I've been able to keep all of the different Prism decks throughout the formats, and glad that we finally have one for the latest one as well. But as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and Kira Qualia out.